This is my Polestar 2, a car that I bought used for half of its MSRP about 6 months ago. Put on just under 6,500 miles in that 6 months time, and I wanted to give you a 6-month update. What I like, what I don't, what's wrong with it, and what are my plans for the future, and should you buy a used Polestar 2 like I did? Let's get into it. So, let's just cut to the chase. Do I actually like this car? Yes, very. It's extremely fun to drive, it's easy to park, it's cheap to run, and it doesn't look like a homeless turtle, unlike the Model 3. I'm very happy that I picked this over a Model 3. Yes, there is some trade-offs, like I don't have FSD support, I don't get all the cool technology features of a Model 3, but this looks better, obviously subjective. And obviously, if you can see, I really care about this car because I didn't even bother to wash it because I wanted you guys to see it how it normally sits, which is in this state. Very dusty because we live on a house with a gravel driveway. What have I modified on this thing? There actually is a little more than you would think on face value. For one, I tinted my windows. I have 70% on the front windshield, 35% on the front windows, and 15% on the rear glass because when you live in an oven, it gets pretty hot on the inside. So having window tint has been so nice. I've wrapped my center console so it doesn't look like cheap piano black plastic. I've installed a FitCam-X dash cam, which I will put a link up in the card to my other YouTube video on me installing it in this car, but it's right here on the dash and it's so sleek you can't even tell it's there. And a dash cam is a must because within 1 week of installing it, I almost got in 2 car accidents.
Man, get off the... Holy shit.
Lovely. And those are all the real modifications, I would say. There are a few accessories that I bought. I bought Tux Mat all-weather floor mats, some center console organizer things, an extra cup holder because the cup holders in this car are terrible. They're garbage. I'll explain that in a second. And there's just some other bits and bops I bought, like all my charging cables and stuff. I bought like NAX adapter, Tesla tap adapter, extension cord, just basic stuff for EVs. So I haven't really done that much. I am planning on getting aftermarket wheels at some point. I don't know when that's gonna happen because, for one, these ones are forged as is, so they're already pretty light. It'd be more for looks sake, and these look pretty good as is. But I kind of do want to differentiate myself from other Polestar owners by getting different wheels. So that is one thing that I'm planning to modify in the future. And then there's the issues that this car currently has, which there's about 4 main issues. First, is only noticeable in direct sunlight. In the paint and generally around the car, there is a pretty decent amount of micro scratches, which can be fixed by polishing. I'm just too lazy. These wheels have been significantly curved by the prior owner. My alignment on the steering wheel is not straight. I have to hold it at a slight angle to get the car to track completely straight. And there is rattles on the interior. I shouldn't say tons. It's really only over big rumble strips, basically, is what makes the interior rattle. If you're just on a decently smooth road, you won't hear it, which thank God, because rattles annoy the absolute crap out of me. Those are the 4 main issues, and obviously, there is kind of a 5th. The infotainment system often has a lot of glitches. I've had my radio sound like static. I've had my backup camera not appear. I've had my phone key not connect. It's just been, there's a lot of software glitches and all of them have been fixed either by a restart or a software update. So that is great, but they shouldn't exist to begin with. So it kind of still feels like, even though it's been out for almost 5 years, the Polestar 2, it still feels like an unfinished product in some ways. Another issue that I forgot to mention earlier, and it was super easy to fix, I did it myself, it was extremely easy, is that about a month ago, whenever I put this thing into reverse, it would make a horrendous screeching sound coming from the brakes. What happened was a little itty bitty rock got stuck in between the disc brake shield and the actual brake disc. So whenever I backed up, it made a sound. Luckily, all I had to do was take the driver rear wheel off and I just wiggled the brake shield and a rock fell out and it was fixed. That was like the easiest fix of all time. So it's fixed now and it doesn't make any weird noises, so that's good. And then there's the other thing about used EVs. I was gonna say high mileage, but this is not high mileage. It only has 17,111 miles on it. It's battery degradation. And I'm assuming since this car is 3 years old, this is 2021, that it has around 94 to 93% battery health. And again, the mileage isn't super great, so I'm not thinking it's gonna be that low, but it's still enough range for what I use this car for. I have taken it on a 2,800 mile road trip and the charging curve is actually decent. It'll hold 150 kilowatts until about 50 to 55%, then it'll taper off, which is perfect for charger hopping pretty much. That's what this car is really good at. It's just charge enough to get the next 100 miles to the next charger. So now I wanted to talk some price of operation numbers. And this is interesting because about half of the mileage I put on this car in the 6 months of owning it has been on a nearly 3,000 mile road trip, so the cost won't be accurate, but I wanted to do it based on my home electricity rate. So let's whip out a calculator. 6,250 miles-ish is about what I put on, divided by 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is less than I typically get, but that'll account for charging losses. So we do that, multiplied by my home electricity rate, which is 14 cents per kilowatt hour, and I should have spent around $350 in total to run this car for just a little bit over 6,000 miles. That's really cheap if you think about it. So yeah, this thing is incredibly cheap to run. Though, to be brutally honest, mine total cost would probably be closer to $480 because I spent probably $330 on road tripping it, but that's because DC fast charging is more expensive than charging at home by a long shot. So if you don't have home charging, I would not advise buying an EV. Another question people have when it comes to EVs is range, especially cars that are not known to have a lot of it, and this is one of them. My typical range is anywhere from 180 to 220 miles, and that means I'm averaging anywhere from like 2.6 up to about 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. That is not super efficient. For comparison, a Rivian R1T, a 7,000 pound truck, gets 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour, which is only about 0.3 miles per kilowatt hour less than the lower end of the average of this, if that makes sense. However, this is a significantly smaller and more aerodynamic vehicle, so that must mean that Polestar is doing really poor job on the powertrain control strategy. At least on this one. I'm pretty sure the newer ones are a lot better, but again, my range only being about 180, 220 miles is not a lot. But that doesn't stop me from road tripping it, and it's pretty much enough for what I need for day-to-day use. Here are some things I like and some things I don't. There's quite a few. I will be complaining a lot, and I do want to emphasize that I still really love this car, but I'm going to be nitpicking since I've lived with it for 6 months. So let's start with some pros and cons. The first one is the frunk. While it does have it, it is not incredibly large, and you cannot access it from the phone. You have to pop it like a traditional hood. And as you can see, there is some space for charging cables and other accessories, but not much else. I wish it would be a little deeper so you could actually put maybe a small carry-on luggage case in here, but I'm glad that it exists at all, so this is a benefit. Another thing I do not like about this car is the absolute horribleness, it's not even a word, the absolute crap that is this center console design. For one, my knee is constantly hitting it, although it doesn't hurt though. It's actually kind of nice, it holds me in well, but the storage is the main problem. There's only one usable cup holder, and if I slide this armrest forward, there's no usable cup holders. This is the only other storage pocket. There's one on the other side too, but there is no deep center console. It's probably this deep, so you can't really put anything in. So this whole center console I just wish was different. The rear space in this car is mediocre at best. I have very little legroom, very little headroom. My head is actually touching the ceiling. And this hump right here where the wheel is makes it incredibly difficult to wedge yourself in and out if you're of age or of disability. So back seat is not ideal. One thing I do like about the Polestar 2's design is that the fact that it's a liftback with a kick sensor. It opens for you, there's plenty of space in there, and there's even underfloor storage. So this is probably a way more useful cargo area than most people would think for the size of the vehicle. Also, it's missing a little rubber bump stop there. I gotta get that fixed when I take it in for service. Another thing I really wish this car had was ventilated seats. Yes, I know you can get Polestar 2 launch editions with Nappa leather that is ventilated. My car does not have that option. And for one, I didn't even want it anyway because it looks horrendous because it is tan leather. And if you live in a place that is a sauna, like Texas, keep in mind it is October 6th and it is 84 degrees right now. Ventilated seats would be really nice. And this seat material is not breathable at all. You sweat in these seats. It's really uncomfortable on long distances. The seat shape is fine for my body type, but I just don't like the seat material. But it is durable though, and I will give them that. The one thing about these seats though that does make them significantly more comfortable is the thigh extension. And obviously, I just charge my car at home 99.9% of the time. I do actually really like this button to stop the charging. That's a really nice feature that I wish every EV had, because if I'm at a DC fast charger, I can just press this to stop, and then instead of having to wait for the crappy EA touchscreens to respond to my touch telling it to stop. And I do like that this is just an easy way to open it. Like, you don't have to open it from the inside. It's not power, it's not gonna break. You just slam it open and it works. And one thing I dislike if you're coming from a person that has older charging cables is that there's no USB-A ports. There's only USB-C, and the wireless charger sucks balls. All it does is make your phone incredibly hot, and it'll maybe charge it 5% before the phone overheats and then quits charging. So I wish they did what Hyundai and Kia does and pump AC underneath the charging pad, because then it would actually work. But you win some, you lose some, so I just turned it off in settings. I don't use the wireless charger at all. Although one thing that is super nice over other small cars is rear seat air vents. Also, side note, I've never seen another car with a lock button on the rear doors. That's interesting. Also, if you see, there is a massive hump in the floor, and that's where the batteries are, which, to be fair, I actually do like, because then that means that the regular height of the floor in the right here is actually not like this. It's actually decent. Another thing I really appreciate is the Polestar app. So I can view my state of charge, lock and unlock the car from the Polestar app. Usually it takes a second. It's not the best app, but it does exist, and I do like having it. You can also start the climate from here. You can check your charge limit, so you can see how much range you have in your charge limit, and you can actually schedule from here, and you can see your position, which I'm not gonna click because that would just dox myself pretty much. So that's all good. I like the app. The only thing I wish you could do is change the temperature that the climate preconditions to. It will only go to 72 degrees and it'll only run for a max of 30 minutes. Why? And like I said, start preconditioning, but then it only goes to 72 degrees for 30 minutes. This car is equipped with rear auto brake, which I now turn off every single time I shift into reverse, because half the time when I'm backing into my garage, it scares the crap out of me. Another driver assistance feature that I turn off immediately in every car I drive pretty much is lane keep assist. Not active lane keep, but lane keep assist. Just basically pushes you back in if you reach a line, which is incredibly aggressive, so I turn it off. And even with it off, it still does it. Why? Another thing I do not like is the auto steer, like the actual auto steer, pilot assist. Works, but by works, I mean just barely works. It will try to take you off exit ramps. It'll commonly lose track of the lanes, sending you off into oblivion if you're not paying attention. It's a really outdated system, and they really need to improve it with a refresh of the whole ADAS system. Although automatic emergency braking on the front of the car is really good, and I have gotten into that once, and it did save me a little bit there. Another thing I don't like is something I thought I would at the beginning, but the washer nozzles are on the wiper. And the problem with that is that if you want to just like flick the stock to actually like soak the window and let it sit, you cannot do that. That does not work, because the wipers have to move to get fluid on the actual windshield. So it's like, you win some, you lose some. You technically will use less washer fluid. And this car has headlight washer. Although getting them to actually do anything is kind of tricky, because you have to like press the washer fluid a bunch of times, and it's kind of goofy. Another thing I don't like, which is not really its fault because they did add it the following year for 2022 and onward, is a heat pump. This car has no heat pump because it's a 2021. They never did, at least in the North American market. So I'm curious what it's gonna be like in the winter months of Texas, which is the lowest you're ever gonna see is 40, but that still requires to run the heater. So I'm curious, how much is my range gonna drop because I have no heat pump? While these frameless mirrors are extremely cool, when they fold in, they give you the smallest amount of clearance ever. That's it, that's all they do. So that's why I have folding mirrors turned off. I also really like the brakes on this thing. They're Brembo brakes, which means even though I barely use the brakes on this thing, they will stop this thing really fast. Another problem with that is that these tires are not the factory tires. These are $90 a piece tires. For something this expensive and this heavy, that is kind of concerning. Although they don't drive terribly. They drive actually they drive all right. They're not bad by any stretch, but they probably are handicapping the car in efficiency and in performance. These sun visors do not slide at all, if I can even, ow. And they don't even have a little extension wing like some cars do. They just do not slide, which means you can never cover this part of the window. I don't know why they just wouldn't make it an extension or make it slide in some way. I do like the fact that there is keyless entry on all doors, but the fact that this is a little touch button is annoying, because if you're pressure washing it with the key in your pocket, it will just constantly be unlocking and locking itself over and over and over again. Regular door handles, you just yank on them. That's it. Also, one thing I noticed is that if you don't go auto window, it's an incredibly slow window. These buttons are for your cruise control. So you have reset plus and minus, toggles, I believe, your lane centering, but this button doesn't do anything. Like, there's just a button that doesn't do anything. I thought this would toggle between adaptive cruise and standard cruise, but it does nothing. Or maybe I'm misremembering which one is which. It could be this one that does nothing and this one is auto steer or not. I'm not exactly sure. But one of these two doesn't do anything. I do actually like that this actually does have rain sensing wipers, but I never use them. It does does have 360 cam, which a lot of cars do, but this one has a front camera, which is something that Model 3 doesn't have. The only Tesla that has a front camera is the Cybertruck. And that makes it really good because I can just pull as far up to something as I want, because typically when I'm pulling up to a parking spot, I have no clue how far my bumper is away, and I always end up being like 2 to 4 feet back away from the curb often. So using this front camera really helps me nose into the spot. These air vents on the top of the dash are really crappy. For one, you can't close them. Two, you can't really angle them more than like that much, so they're really hard to aim. And three, even if you do aim them as close as you can to you, they're still really hard to get air onto your body. So I end up using these. The only problem with these is that they just end up hitting the steering wheel. Also, I always have Eco Climate on, but to be honest, I have no idea what it does. Generally, I really like how the Polestar looks. The only thing I'm not super in love with is the back. For one, it's a really short lip, which is kind of weird for a sedan. And two, the back end is really high off the ground compared to the rest of the car. So it looks like they started from the back with an SUV and then they just got more sedan as they went, or vice versa. It's just kind of weird. If I leave my car and drive and I just open the door with my seatbelt off, it'll just put itself in park. So I don't really even have to press this button to put it in park. It'll just do that for me. The sound system is just okay. It's a Harman Kardon sound system. I really wish this had the Bowers and Wilkins from nicer Volvos, but Harman Kardon is decent. It won't blow you away, but it's not awful. That was the volume all the way up. It's also not that loud, to be honest. 2021 has a physical dimmer switch, which the newer ones don't have for some reason. Another thing that really bothers me with the climate control system is the fan speed depends on the temperature that you have set. So let's say it's right now, it's at 64 degrees. If I turn it to low, it turns up the fan even though I haven't changed the fan speed setting, which is, it's really weird. One thing I really do like about this car is the Google integration. How far can I go on my remaining charge?
You can drive for about 155 miles with the remaining charge.
So that goes against 160, but it's pretty close. And Google Maps is phenomenal. I never use Apple CarPlay in this thing. Well, primarily because I use an Android phone now, but when I did use my iPhone, which is what I'm recording with, I never used Apple CarPlay because Google Maps is just so great. I never have to think about, like, if I just type in a destination, it tells me my state of charge on arrival and when I get back. That's so good. And if I route plan to somewhere that's far away, it will do it for me. There's no way to turn off traction control. Yes, there is ESC Sport Mode, which limits the traction control intervening, but it doesn't completely turn it off. So you can't really slide the car around anyway because it's all-wheel drive, but can't turn off traction control unless you unplug one of the wheel speed sensors, and that would trip a bunch of codes in the ECU. And I really like that there is physical volume dials, play, pause, hazard, and defroster buttons, unlike the Tesla Model 3. At low states of charge, you have basically no acceleration. Below about 6%, 0 to 60 is pretty much impossible in any amount of time under 30 seconds. So taking it on the highway at 5% or less is really sketchy. So that's why I treat 10% as 0. Also, I do find this sticker to be a little bit tacky, but I like leaving it on there because it's actually the only place on the car where it says Polestar or 2. So people often ask me what it is. People have asked me, is it a Tesla? Is it a Volvo? Just what is it, period? They honestly have no idea. Also, I just like the lock and unlock sound. The headlights are fantastic. They are really bright and they don't blind oncoming drivers, unlike my mom's 2023 Chevy Traverse. The high beams are great, and these fog lights, you can turn them on manually, but I actually don't because they act as cornering lights. Whenever you turn, they actually turn on the fog lights. You can see where you're going, which is actually a nice feature. And these headlamps, they physically turn. It's probably super common, but I haven't seen it on any cars I've personally driven. So there is a map in the gauge cluster, which I appreciate. And in a recent update, they actually made it to where if you navigate somewhere, it shows you the distance in the gauge cluster. It never used to do that until recently, although I really wish it would show state of charge on arrival and not just the mileage, but that is helpful. So I wanted to discuss, what do I plan on doing for this car in the future? Well, one, like I previously mentioned, aftermarket wheels is one. I definitely want to take it to the track. That's another thing, or autocrossing, either two, probably both actually. Do a lot of more EV road tripping with it. New tires eventually because they're going to get worn out. And maybe I might spend the $1,200 to get the performance software unlock. I'm not sure though. because that's kind of a lot of money for something that I really don't need because this car's already fast enough. But it would make a good video, so I might do it, even though it's been out for a while. I think it only improves the 0 to 60 by anywhere from like 0.1 to 2 seconds, but once you get above 40 miles an hour, it kicks significantly harder from what I've heard, so it might be worth it. I'm not sure. I have thought about getting a tow bar or a tow hitch retrofitted because I would like to be able to pull a small trailer with maybe a lawnmower or something on it, or a four-wheeler. And this thing is rated for 2,000 pounds, which is more than I really would need, maybe a jet ski. And you could probably pull more than that because it is all-wheel drive and has plenty of power and torque to pull things. So realistically, having a tow hitch would be a really useful tool, and I really wish I had the electronic retracting one, but that one is so expensive if you're gonna get it installed by the dealer. It's like $3,000 to $4,000, so that's out of the question. But apart from that, I don't really know what else to do with this car other than just enjoy it and drive it. Speaking of which, let's take it for a drive. Here's the 70. So it pulls pretty good at higher speed too. It's not super slow. Obviously it's not like as fast as a Model S Plaid or anything, but it doesn't have to be. Now there is some other rattles I noticed. It's really only over like big speed bumps and stuff that you hear it. On a fairly rough texture road like this, you don't hear too much. Test of the suspension right here on these train tracks. Not too bad. It handles big bumps well because of the weight, but the small bumps you do feel. Sport mode here, if I can press the button. Merging on to US 175. And so it's not a super oversteery car because it's 50-50 power split, so you're never gonna fishtail or anything. It's very planted in that regard. So it's a very easy car to drive fast because of that. So you have really no risk of oversteer or anything like that. And as you can see, my wheel is not completely straight.
It's a little bit of alignment.
A little bit. Needs an alignment, but that's just how it be sometimes. This car doesn't look that fast. It's just kind of like apart from the wheels, it doesn't look like it'd be something super sporty or anything. So it's kind of a sleeper in that regard, and I kind of like that because people with Teslas, they know they're quick because it's been out for a while, but other cars are just like, oh, that's just a Volvo or whatever. It's not be that fast. Merging on highways is really easy because you have a lot of power until you get below 10%, and then it's not so easy. Over this bump, some rattles in the rear. And so it's not super windy today. It's actually pretty still out, so it shouldn't be affected by wind. Pilot assist canceled. Resume active driving. Emergency stop assist is activated. And then it will bring itself to a stop, and it will put the hazards on. Adaptive cruise, though, does work really well, and I do like using adaptive cruise. When we pass this exit, if it'll try to take the exit even though I'm not indicating. Oh, it thought about it. It thought about the exit. It didn't do it, though. Yeah, it's going to go over here, and then we'll see if it tries to take this turn. Yep, it's trying to take us off there. And it's still trying to. And then it just canceled. And it didn't beep or anything to tell me it canceled. Hold the wheel. It's really picky about when you hold the wheel and when you don't hold the wheel. Like some cars will let you go forever without holding the wheel. Yeah, it's going to try to take us off that turn.
Gosh, this is the one when we rented it, I really did.
Well, I was giving it the benefit of doubt because it was Dallas. Then it's going to try to, yep, it's taking us off this exit too. And then it disengages without warning me. I mean, it does warn me through feel via the wheel, but it doesn't warn me through sound, which would be, I think, better anyways. If your hands aren't on the wheel, you're not going to feel that because it's through the wheel, obviously. But when there is no exits on the road, it does an okay job. It just really doesn't know what to do. I think it's because the lane line is going that way, so it just thinks the lane is widening. But no, usually when it's an on-ramp, it stays straight. But it is nice on like a flat Kansas highway. It'll just keep you in the lanes and you won't you can just relax a little bit more. So as you can see, yep. And sometimes it's really aggressive with it too. Like it tries to yank you. So if you just know when to take over, like when to keep it going straight, then it works okay. Also sometimes it'll it'll overcompensate and then need to go back a little bit. So I'm guessing here it's probably gonna try to go left. Yep, tried to go left. Yeah, that's the main thing with the driver assistance on this car that I don't like. Get over for traffic. I do like versus Tesla Autopilot though, is that when you put the signal on, it cancels immediately and then automatically re-engages. That's something that Tesla doesn't. You have to put the signal on and then steer out of it and then re-engage, which is kind of annoying. No one coming from that side. There's no yield sign for that Jeep though, so he had the right of way. I don't know what he was doing. Also, the speed limit sensor on this car is not great. It said it was a 30 back there when it was definitely not a 30, it was a 55.
This old lady shouldn't even be driving. She doesn't drive very well.
Net's a stop, 0. Where does that road go? Right there. Oh, scraped a little bit.
See.
I didn't want to take it too angled because I thought I would hit the curb.
All them pretty new trucks.
Whatever.
Before after this white car.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Buddy. 0 to 60, nothing flat. We got 2 of them.
Port mode.
Support my neck, so I'll get
3,
whiplash.
1.
You can jump these tracks.
I noticed the initial takeoff is quick, and then it's like just traction limited, or it feels like it. Yeah.
I'm not riding on this road.
Go around him.
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead. Need to fix that.
Yeah, we gotta fix that drive.
Skid steer's over on a job.
I'm going to answer the question, should you buy a used Polestar 2? Well, the answer is, it depends. If you can find a good deal on one like I did, I think it was a good deal. It was really low mileage for less than half of MSRP, so take 62 grand and cut that in half. That's basically what I paid for it, with only 10,800 miles on it. That was a good deal, and it's pretty much fully loaded except for the Napa leather seating package. If you can find one that's fully loaded for that price or less with this kind of mileage, then I'd say you're winning. But other than that, it might just be better to buy a used Model 3 or wait until the 2024 and newer Polestar 2s become cheaper to this point, so then you can get the updated battery and longer range versus this car. Because this car, the range is honestly a little shorter than I would like. I really wish it could get 250 miles comfortably. 200 is just enough for me to be comfortable driving at places. Anything less than that, I don't really know. And for the average person, if you can't charge at home, this is not the EV for you, because considering how little range it has and how inefficient it is, you're gonna be spending a lot more on charging if you're charging in a public place, and you're gonna have to do it way more often. So maybe lease a Lucid Air or something? I don't know, do what you think, but I'm really happy with this decision to get this car over something else. The only thing that I am worried about is if it gets in an accident, it will be totaled because it's gonna be way more cost to fix it than it's worth. So yeah, if I get into an accident, then I'll probably just get a Rivian. I'll just wait until the R1Ts get cheaper and buy a used Rivian. So yeah, in the next few years, if we see me talking about my Rivian, then that's what happened to this car. Otherwise, I'm gonna just keep driving it until the wheels fall off. But to finally answer the conclusion to this video, do I really like this thing? Obviously, I've said this before, but yes, I really do. I love driving it. It's quiet, it's fast, it looks good, and it handles well. And in a car, that's really what I look for. I like driving a lot, even though I don't even have my license yet. All my driving has been on my permit. So yeah, I really like driving this thing around. So by the time I get my license, my mileage is gonna go from like this to this. It's gonna be an exponential increase because I'm probably gonna be driving this thing everywhere because for one, I wanna road trip it some more. Even though I took that 2,800 mile road trip, I wanna do probably a cross country drive, maybe the Cannonball Run, but not like actually trying to break the record, if that makes sense. Like just do the drive, which is what? Is that 2,400 miles or something? Something like that. Overall, I'm really glad I got got this car, I would get it again. That's my answer. I would. The only thing I could think of to get instead of it is a Rivian R1T, but that's significantly more expensive. So this is a lot cheaper. And if you live in Texas and go to Texas schools, some people definitely make fun of you for driving electric, but to be honest, I don't care because I don't drive an EV because of the environment. I just drive it because I like them. So yeah, that's the end of this video. See y'all in the next one. Bye.